Welcome to Cosmic Delusions. The problem with evolution, according to Charles Darwin.
Charles Robert Darwin was born on February 12, 1809 at Shrewsbury, England. He was a naturalist, biologist, explorer and geologist. On December 27, 1831, Darwin departed England on the HMS Beagle. His voyage around the world would last for 5 years as he explored the planet and collected biological specimens. He was impressed by the flora and fauna of the Galapagos Islands, particularly the finches.
Charles Darwin returned to England on October 2, 1836. He proceeded to publish his findings. His major work, The Origin of Species, was accepted by the scientific community and became a driving force. Darwin proposed that all life evolved from one, or maybe 5, biologically imperfect progenitors. He saw the origin of species as a struggle and a survival of the fittest, with natural selection being the driving force. Darwin concluded that natural selection could not produce any modification exclusively for the good of another species. He saw natural selection producing structures that would harm other animals, such as the fangs of the adder.
In the words of Charles Darwin, if it could be proved that any part of the structure of any one species had been formed for the exclusive good of another species, it would annihilate my theory, for such could not have been produced through natural selection. According to the dictionary, the word annihilation means complete destruction or obliteration. Total defeat. So, Darwin's idea of natural selection would be obliterated, rendered meaningless, if it can be proved that species have structures that benefit other species.
Earth's biosphere is subdivided into ecosystems, with the Amazon basin being one of the largest and probably most important. Many have described it as the lungs of our planet. Other major ecosystems include the Great Barrier Reef of Australia and the subcontinent of Antarctica. The biodiversities of all ecosystems are responsible for the maintenance of life on this planet. All native plants, animals and microorganisms within an ecosystem support each other in some way or the other. They are not competing for their own survival, possibly bringing harm to other species. Bacteria in the soil change organic matter into energy that can be used by other organisms. Some form partnerships with trees to fix nitrogen in the soil. Others degrade pollutants, improving water dynamics and suppressing diseases.
Plants provide multiple services for any ecosystem. They act as temperature regulators, providing shade for other species to thrive. They remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it. They are also able to remove pollutants from the atmosphere. Birds, bats, and other creatures, especially microorganisms in the soil, depend upon trees for their survival. Trees act as stabilizers for soil, helping to prevent landslides. They generate oxygen for our planet and provide nutrition for many species in the form of fruits, nuts, vegetables, etc. They provide valuable medicines to humanity. Their aesthetic value that improves human well-being cannot be overestimated. Scientific research has shown that human beings who have access to trees in their surroundings have lower cardiovascular and respiratory mortality. Their longevity is increased. These benefits could not have been provided by natural selection. Animals all have important supporting roles to play in ecosystems. This is especially true for top predators like wolves. Yellowstone National Park is known for its wolves, bears, bison, and elk. These large animals are supported by over 1,000 different species, such as nematodes, mollusks, mushrooms, bees, plants, bats, and insects. When the wolves were exterminated by park rangers, the park's ecosystem began to suffer. The elk increased and began overgrazing the landscape. After the wolves were introduced some 70 years later, in 1995, this ecosystem began to recover. The wolves decreased the elk population, willow trees grew taller and more abundant, and the beaver population recovered. The coyote populations dropped, causing the gopher and squirrel population to increase. As a result, there was more food for the hawks and eagles.
There is a plethora of scientific evidence that whole species interact with and support other species for their good in ecosystems. Life on Earth is one giant network of supporting, interacting cells, ranging from tiny one-celled organisms in the soil, to giant multi-celled plants, animals, and people. All of this evidence, if Charles Darwin is correctly understood, annihilates natural selection and the theory of evolution. There are many species having modifications that also act for the good of all species. We simply have to look for them. Pollination is probably the most important biological process within ecosystems. Pollinators, such as bats, bees, birds, butterflies, flies, moths, wasps and other insects, assist in the movement of pollen. This is a vital step in order for plants to bear fruits, seeds and multiply. Most ecosystems on land cannot thrive without pollinators.
It has been estimated that at least 75% of plants require other species, particularly insects and small animals, for cross-fertilization. The actions of these pollinators feed other species, continually producing new plants that support life on the planet. Bees, some of the most important pollinators, come with fine leg hairs that pollen becomes attached to as they seek the nectar of flowers. This pollen, along with excess from their pollen baskets, is transferred to the next flower they visit. Butterflies do not have pollen baskets like bees, but the pollen sticks to their legs and mouth parts, which is transferred as they visit the flowers of other plants.
We may conclude that pollinators are not aware of their pollination efforts. Whether they perform this process consciously or subconsciously is irrelevant. What is important is that they achieve the goal that they were created for. Pollinators are essential for the production of food for human beings and other animals. Without them, our food supply would be curtailed and grocery stores would be a relic of the past. The absence of the supporting, goodwill services of these pollinating creatures would eventually cause most ecosystems to collapse. Life as we know it would cease on the planet. This pollinating process by many different species, some having modifications that act exclusively for the good of all species, could not have been produced through natural selection.
In all fairness, it must be stressed that Darwin would not have had access to information detailing the biological complexity of our planet's ecosystems when he wrote The Origin of Species. His caveat about natural selection is exemplary for all researchers. In closing, it is important to repeat his words of wisdom.
If it could be proved that any part of the structure of any one species had been formed for the exclusive good of another species, it would annihilate my theory, for such could not have been produced through natural selection.
Charles Darwin. The Origin of Species. Thank you for watching. This video was produced by balfourchristian.com for educational purposes.